you ever have like with those sports movies that we do, where you're supposed to have that like great speech in there? You know, where you're supposed to have the claw your way back into, from like any given Sunday, or like the Gettysburg Address, speech from Denzel and Remember the Titans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you don't get that in this movie. Like it's not that there's not great like little speeches and whatnot, but when it comes to like that big time speech, it all comes from the quarterback, and he's just like, pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory lasts forever. Simplistic, but kind of meatless. You know what I mean?
Hey, that's all I need.
Welcome back to the classic cinematic movie podcast. Takes you back to the iconic films 20 years ago. I am your host, Danger Neff, and with me, as always, is going to be my partner in crime for at least this month, Leland Hairston. Lund, how you doing, bud?
Yo, Lund's back. I'm hidden. I'm coming at you from my Corona bunker.
I'm
Mind the duct tape.
a Corona bunker. I picture Blast from the Past, where there's like little fake Teflon, lawn, and like shelves upon shelves of just,
Canned
not
peaches and bullets or whatever.
how to ballroom dance, and then how to fight, from the 1950s.
Hey man, Brendan, he was getting them licks in, dude.
He sure did.
Tore up Nathan in that movie.
I kind of crack up. We were cracking up off camera here because I never realized that I feel like the only movies that you and I actually do are Keanu Reeves movies and Patrick Swayze movies. So I'm renaming this podcast for whenever you're on here. Welcome to the Reeves Swayze podcast, the cinematic portrayal of our love for these two actors. That come on any given way. So that means next week when you're on, we have to do like Ghost.
I would love to do Ghost. Ghost would be great. Donnie Darko, I love that movie, so
yeah, there you
definitely
go.
do that. Even though I think we're a little too soon on that one.
Creepy appearance in that one. Donnie
Yeah,
weird movie.
excellent movie.
So yeah, it's kind of hilarious that we're doing yet again another Keanu Reeves movie. And this one is also kind of a personal favorite of mine because it's loosely based on a true story. It's loosely based on some actual facts that wound up happening.
That's right. Actually, we kind of looked into that a little bit after we watched the movie. We were talking about the football strike.
That's right.
'87, right?
That's right. So if you don't know what movie that we're actually talking about, we're taking this back all the way to August 11th of 2000 with the movie The Replacements.
Yeah.
And this kind of started, what's hilarious? Like the chick in this movie is so gorgeous, and I feel like I never saw her in anything ever again. But she like hit like all the notes for me.
Well, Brooke Langton. Oh yeah, she is sort of like the cute, fun girl next door.
She was hitting it for me, man. Like everything, and I'm like, how is this person like not more popular than what she wound up becoming? Because this could have been like a leap off point for her. Original release date for this was August 11th of 2000. It came in with a budget of $50 million with a box office of $50.1 million. So yay for profit.
Gotta make that money.
haven't pulled up the Rotten Tomatoes, but I can assume that this is probably going to be kind of panned a little bit from critics, and then probably pretty decently loved by the audiences. I don't know. What do you think? Before I pull those up, what's your prediction?
Oh man, yeah. I'm thinking like a 40, mid 40s to like 50s ish for the critic score,
Okay.
and probably like a 70-80 from the audience score.
All right. So it winds up becoming a 41% for critics. So good guess on that. And then only a 66% from audiences, which I'm a little...
Oh, no. I'm a little surprised about that. I thought it would,
it opened itself up against Hollow Man, Space Cowboys, The Nutty Professors 2, The Clown. It was still in theaters. So there wasn't. It was actually the only new movie to release on that day, so it was
Oh,
kind of mixed in with the rest of the bunch there.
yeah.
And I want to get into the history of how this movie kind of came in together because, yes, it is based upon Keanu Reeves, who is a former Ohio State quarterback, which he also was
Utah.
in grade, which he also was in
Utah.
grade, named Shane Falco,
Yeah.
uh,
Jane
who
Falco. Yep.
who was a little bit way over in his head a little bit, and they bring in this really great performance by Gene Hackman, and I felt like this was like Hackman at some of his best
Oh
because
yeah.
he's just so enjoyable in this movie and so likable in this movie
Oh
that
man. Well, I mean, he definitely tested those waters out already, like in Hoosiers and all that. So
right. So he already knows sports movies, but I
yeah,
think what was more impressive with him in this one is that is he was a lot more lighthearted than
yeah.
than he normally is in his roles because usually he's not very comical uh,
No, he's a serious.
until
I
you
mean,
get even when you get into like the bird cage, which
yeah,
I know that probably hit a funny bone for him a couple of times. You could probably tell that he was trying to play this as much of a straight man as he was
yeah,
uh, until he took into this role. And this time he kind of just felt like he let loose a little bit. He was like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy myself through this. But this movie is loosely based on a true story. And what it was is that in 1987, the NFLPA had a strike in the NFL. And it was a little weird because because in our history, and mind you, I was born in 87, you were born 86.
85.
85. So you were born in 85. And so this wasn't, even though it's our history, it wasn't like our history.
Yeah, we're still
Um,
youngsters at the
right,
time.
exactly. It's like when a baby, like a late baby boomer says that JFK assassination is like their history. I was like, you're three.
Right.
Like you were three when it happened. So it's like, it's awful. And I'm not saying that it didn't not happen. Just,
Yeah,
it's not what you exactly remember on that day.
you
Anyway,
weren't thinking about that.
the whole point of the strike circles itself around the only reason why the strike actually happens, and it was this huge labor dispute based upon players feeling like they're basically not getting their fair share of the money portions that kind of come in. And this is a little bit of a different NFL at the time, which a lot of people don't. I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with this, but free agency hadn't even been a thing yet in the NFL. So
Mm,
you couldn't just leave a team. Somebody would have to buy your rights or you'd have to be traded or something like that. And so what would wind up happening is players were basically only getting a very minimal share of the profits that the owners were getting. And they went on strike after week 2 of the NFL season. Week 3, there were no games. And in the process, the entire NFL decided to hire some teams literally hired semi-pro teams, a lot of players from the Montreal Alouettes,
mm,
the recently disbanded United States Football League, which had literally like terminated its contract in 1986. So here's where the stranger for fiction kind of really kicks in. The Washington Redskins, which this team is loosely based upon, went 3-0 in their campaign into the season. Right
yeah.
in the process, they went 3-0 and they wound up going to the Super Bowl that year, and they won the Super Bowl that year. Mind you, they played the Dallas Cowboys in one of those 3-0 games where I would say about 30% of the team was actual NFL starters on that team. Like with
Right. The players had some of them had recrossed the picket line
right,
to play.
right. So so they crossed the picket line. They decided to play. They still won. When the 1987 season ended with the Redskins as Super Bowl champions, the replacement players actually never got a ring out of it, and that's kind of a little bit controversial because if the replacement players didn't win all three of their games, there's the Redskins probably don't even qualify for the playoffs that year.
Right.
Which means they would have never been Super Bowl champions. So the rule is in sports is if you ever play for a team, regardless of how little you're with that team, you could literally be there for 1 week. But if they win the title, you're entitled to a Super Bowl ring, or you're entitled to a championship ring.
Right.
For whatever reason. So in 2017, ESPN did a 30 for 30 documentary. And mind you, these players were like, nobody liked them. They were insulted all the
Right.
time. They were called scabs. And that's literally the name of the documentary. It's called 30 for 30 Year of the Scab, with the whole thing being about, okay, these guys played their hearts out, got this redemption story of getting the second chance, which is what these players want in the first place. And they were part of the team that would wind up winning the Super Bowl. That was
Yeah.
later rectified for them not getting the Super Bowl rings on July 11th of 2018. So those teams actually won the Super Bowl and actually got it from there. Whew, that's a lot of true information that came out without me ever talking about this movie.
Yeah, that's a crazy story.
It is. I always laugh because
I mean, give the guys the rings right off. They won it for you, right?
right, exactly. I mean, they were at least part of the team itself. So you gotta give them their just due on that.
Give them their due.
So
Give me my flowers. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
Exactly. So this movie really kicks off with basically the Washington Sentinels, who are playing this game where you see the quarterback, who is an all-pro quarterback with 2 Super Bowl rings,
Yeah.
with 2 championship rings. Basically,
Martell. Yeah.
Basically slides on a play they should have tried to run in for the end zone because, well, he's worth $7-8 million a year. So
right, he purposely punts. He turfs the play on purpose.
Right.
Essentially, yeah.
Now there's still 4 games left in the season, and the owner of the Sentinels, who is played by Jack Warden, in his final film appearance, Edward O'Neill, calls his former coach of his, who is Jimmy McGinty, and he tells McGinty that basically, I want to try to put a team together. If we win 3 of our next 4, we qualify for the playoffs. Right?
Yeah.
He has a week to put together this team, have a playbook in mind,
right?
Something, and I'm like,
train them, do everything, and they're all replacement players, so none of them is playing football.
So
yeah.
This movie kind of borrows some things from. Do you know the story of Marshall College?
No.
It's pretty famous for those who know the history of college football. There's a movie that's called We Are Marshall, and it's based upon the 1978 airplane crash that literally killed the Marshall football team, all of them, all their coaches.
What? That's starting to sound a little familiar now.
Right. So what wound up happening for the scene, this happened pretty late of spring of 1978 or 79. I could be getting the years wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They bring in this coach, and the coach decides to say, okay, well, I'm going to build this team however way that I possibly can. And the only way, the problem is that in college football, when it comes to recruiting, you're basically trying to go out of your way to try to find these players to get in there. But the college recruiting season is over.
Right.
So he needs to find 53 people to play college football at that time. And he found a couple of things. He found a soccer star, and I think the quarterback was a track star. And they really changed the playbook to try to win. And they actually won 1 game, which is pretty impressive considering that some of these guys, play pretty hard for each other. But
right.
They did win the one game. So this kind of takes on that same role. McGinty goes out and he recruits former All-Pro quarterback from Ohio State University, the Ohio State University, Shane Falco, who played in the 1996 Sugar Bowl.
Mm.
But there was here's a little trivia for you. There was no 1996 Sugar Bowl.
Oh, so this is fabricated.
I mean, yes and no. It would have been considered the 1996 Sugar Bowl, but the Sugar Bowl that year happened in 1997 on January 2nd, and the year happened in 1995. So it's the leap year supposedly in between, even though that's not technically true, but it is true. It's true. And Falco is played by the ever handsome, devilishly handsome in this movie, Keanu Reeves, who basically
oh my god,
lives on this houseboat and cleans plankton shit off of
boats. Yeah,
that's right. Go ahead and take over.
Yeah, that's, you know what, honestly, for being like a disgraced football player, that is not a bad job,
You know what? You gotta have a good point there. You're right.
No, I mean, look, you live on a houseboat, you do what you love every day, you get to snorkel, it's playing football underwater. Pretty dope, pretty good.
Right. I never understood that scene. Initially, Falco refuses, but McGinty basically convinces him, believing that Falco can still be the player that he was meant to be. Basically, trying to give Falco the second chance that he never got, because he was supposed to be like the next big thing coming out of the Ohio State, but unfortunately, he was like he basically had no reason to be playing in a game like that.
Right, like
he was like too young or something like that.
Right. And like the story kind of is that he's this really good quarterback. He has this great arm, but he's constantly just getting mashed whenever the defensive players come in, like he just gets tackled all the fucking time. That's his That's his stick.
Now, some of the other players on this team quickly become very quickly fan favorites for everybody. Reese Ifans, who owns a pub, who plays the kicker. He is known as the leg because he can apparently kick a soccer ball across the field, which I don't really think that's that hard if you're a professional soccer player, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I'd have to trust you on that
one. And he's every bit like he has a gambling problem and he
drinks.
He hits all the cliches.
Right.
We have a wonderful little appearance by Faison Love, and I'm going to get the gentleman's name wrong, so I don't want to do that. No, I got it wrong. Michael Taliaferro. Michael Taliaferro actually played. This is a little bit of fun history for you. Michael Taliaferro actually played for the Denver Broncos in 1987 and was like the starting offensive guard. He was one of the replacement players that somehow stuck around or something like that.
Yeah.
And lost that Super Bowl. So it's kind of hilarious for him to kind of come back in this. You also have probably my personal favorite character out of this, who's Jon Favreau, who plays a cop. And
oh yeah, I love this guy.
Plays like the worst version of a cop you would have seen, because he literally, it's hilarious. He busts through like this double barn door, The guys don't even pull guns. He just goes and like
dresses. Yeah, he just starts mashing it. Like he's like super aggressive.
Really aggressive. I'm like, did you even read these guys their rights before you whoop the shit out of them?
Yeah.
He basically I think his backstory is that he literally quit college football to do a second tour in Afghanistan. I'm like, oh,
right.
I'm like, okay, that's just stuff that we do now. And he's played by Jon Favreau. You also have Orlando Jones, who is a mini mart guy. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Because I got to talk about this. McGinty says, in the film, I've been having my eyes on these guys, right?
Right.
Falco makes sense. The guards make sense. The former middle linebacker, okay, that probably makes a lot of sense. where's the plan for Orlando Jones in this?
Yeah,
Like,
like
how are you
is he just
keeping eyes on this guy? Because he
yeah.
really works in a mini mart.
Yeah, he's not doing anything. He's just like cleaning up in a mini mart, and he's super fast. But like all these guys have a quirk. John Favreau, he's a great defensive player, but he's too aggressive. Orlando Jones' thing, he's super fast, but he can't catch a football to save his life. So it's like, what are you gonna do with him, right?
Right.
And he's supposed to be like the wide receiver, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So all of it, all of it is basically a little hilarious. And as they kind of get through their first practice, and you also come to find out that the tight end is literally deaf, but
yeah,
is like a first round talent if he wasn't deaf. And I'm like, well then, why isn't he still in the NFL? I
yeah.
mean,
He should still be in the NFL. I just
right.
don't think representation of disabled people were as good back at that time. Because nowadays they would put some sort of thing in his helmet. I mean,
Right.
he'd probably have those implants where now he could hear, right? Because they have those.
Sure,
They
yeah.
have
Or
those.
I mean, nowadays, yeah, probably 20 years later, they'd find a way to get him in the NFL. But even
Yeah,
back then, like if all he needs is hand signals, then teach him the hand signals.
yeah.
Like you could be like, like they do that. I mean, it doesn't make sense because baseball
He already
uses
knows how to sign.
right. Baseball uses hand signals to communicate with people. Nobody gives a crap about it. All he has to know is what routes I need to exactly run at that time.
Right.
You know, so I don't know. I don't know why he wasn't in the NFL in the first place.
Hmm.
Um, so the first game kind of comes through. By the way, we also get the appearance of head cheerleader Annabelle Farrell, who is trying to find new cheerleaders since the originals apparently went on strike as well, which
Yeah.
makes sense because you only make $50 a game anyway. So,
Right. I.
so
Yeah, that's crazy because like notoriously, don't cheerleaders get paid very little, even like now, sort
yeah,
of.
even nowadays
Yeah.
they don't make thousands of, they only make maybe a couple $100 a game,
Yeah.
which okay, maybe they're not that important to the game, but they're probably more important than like maybe an equipment manager.
Right.
I don't know, maybe that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
um and her little ragtag group
Hey,
of
can we pause the recording for a second?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just. Sorry, we're on.
So the cheerleaders are like this little ragtag group of strippers that actually play an important part to this game at one.
Yeah. They become effective later in the movie, and they're like, there's a whole bunch of girls who audition to be a cheerleader because I
They're all
guess,
cool.
yeah, they're all not so great, and I guess that's the dream. Hmm?
Tackle, 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 tackle,
Oh,
tackle. Yeah. Oh.
give me an A. Give me a T. Like yeah,
So this movie begins the first game against Detroit,
yes,
and against Detroit, there's first of all the movie gets hilarious because these guys immediately start the game with like a delay of game and winds up punching out Shane Falco in the process.
right. You
Like
punch
an
your own
argument
quarterback
happens,
in the face.
right? An argument happens, and he gets cracked in the face, and whatever. The game kind of continues on. But as the game continues on, there was a legitimate moment that they had a chance to win this game. So it's kind of reflecting that the team's probably not as bad as people are think they're going to be. Of course, they're all being insulted anyway by shit like eggs being thrown at them like before the game and
Yeah,
scabs and stuff like that. Um,
right. And
they're
Martell, he ends up flipping
oh
Shane's truck with the rest of his team, essentially.
yeah, let's talk about that. So so what is Martell doing all this time? Because you're a millionaire, dude. Like
Yeah,
you got a free pass. Like this is towards the end of the season. You could probably recover from your injuries. Why are you trying to flip the truck out of a flip. Why are you flipping the truck out of a replacement player who isn't going to be there after 4 weeks? They are clearly
Yeah.
making the point he will not be there after 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's not like the case where, and this, I mean, from a story narrative point, it would make some sense if it's just like, yeah, if they do real good or real well, they might, get spots on the team and kick some of the guys off. That's not what's happening. Even if they win, Martell's still going to come back once he agrees to whatever side of his negotiation is.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess you just need a heel. You need a antagonist.
I got.
So that's the guy. I would think being this millionaire who's just essentially, effectively, you're walking on your contract like a month early. Like, why wouldn't you just get a boat, go somewhere in the South, you know,
And just
Pacific or the Caribbean with a bunch of girls and champagne and shit, and just
right. Why aren't you Dan Blazarian this?
yeah,
why aren't you doing that right now? Because you already have that personality. So just go further with it. Like just go for it. It's okay.
yeah,
Um. So I don't know. I don't know why these players keep messing with these guys. Anyways, towards the end of this game, Falco's finding a way to kind of get this team back a little bit through some excellent plays and a lot of luck. A lot of luck.
yeah,
And on the final play, he calls an audible against a play because he read something. He read blitz, and before he's able to be sacked, he tries to run it in, and he winds up being stuck, or he passes it off to the running back. Running back falls short of the goal line at that point. So
yeah.
first loss of the season. They kind of talked about afterwards their fears a little bit. This is, of course, after Falco and Annabelle are kind of
This is the first. This is after the first game, right?
right.
Yeah.
So and they bring up a really good point in terms of, we have to admit what our fears are for us to be successful afterwards. And Falco comes up with this great analogy of what's called quicksand, which is our idea is you're going through something and you think everything is fine, and then one thing goes bad, then another, and you're just kind of stuck at the bottom of all these problems that you can't figure out, and you feel trapped and you can't get out of it like quicksand. Right.
Yeah.
And that really rallied the guys together. It also helped that the night before they decided to punch out literally everybody, the bar.
Oh yeah, you get into the classic bar fight. Like you can't really have that sort of sports movie team get together moment without the bar fight.
Right. You got to have a bar fight.
Yeah.
And I, if I ever coached a high school football team, I would totally tell that to people. I said, you guys need to go out and cause some trouble, be a bunch of hooligans, for a week, and then you guys are going to be all together, and we're going to be great.
Yeah, it might be better if you're a college coach, because then you can actually take them to the bar.
To an actual bar, right?
Yeah. Because it has to be a bar.
And as they're in prison or jail, whatever
it is. Yeah.
Right. When they're in this holding cell, they kind of come together over the song Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, which during the late 1990s, early 2000s was really overplayed. It was severely overplayed. But whatever, you kind of cope and deal with.
I mean, good song, but yeah, we've heard it.
In the next game against San Diego, they again fall behind again. But this is probably like the funniest game because there's a fat guy touchdown, from the sumo wrestler that they hired. And then the strippers really come into play with some very friendly fanfare. And I mean, like they spend a little bit too much time on this, but you can't help but be laughing because you just saw like one of the cheerleaders smack the other cheerleader on the ass, no problem.
Yeah, this is their like secret weapon, which is like I get why I get why it's supposed to work, but at the same time, like, are the replacements, are they immune to this show? Like, why is it only the
they've been seeing it all through practice, so
I guess so. They built up an immunity.
So So once again, they get behind pretty late, and they wind up recovering an onside kick, and they decide to attempt a 65-yard field goal. Now, the NFL record for a field goal is 64 yards by Matt Prater. So for this to just happen from a replacement player, I guarantee you he would have gotten a contract.
Oh, sure. If you're
Even
just
if he
that good.
hadn't broken his arm. Like they'd probably be like, yeah, let us know where you are next season because you just kicked a 65-yard field goal with room to go, by the way.
Right.
Like,
Plus, you're a kicker, right? So that's your 5 minutes of work a day, right? It's not like you have to be good at anything else. All you gotta do is be able
right.
to kick.
Um, Falco obviously meets up with Annabelle later on in the bar, where it's clearly showed that she's the one that's running it. It was owned by her father, and they kind of have this like little romantic sequence. And kind of the silent MVPs of this film is Pat Summerall and John Madden, who I
Yeah.
don't. This is close to one of their final appearances also because Summerall died in 2006. So when when they're kind of going and they're kind of saying, well, sometimes you just got to really get up there and you got to know like when to score, and
Oh yeah.
he needs to score here to win the game. And it's like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Falco making a move on Annabelle, or are you talking about something else there? So
Yeah. You definitely have to have your sports euphemisms for you know, hooking up.
right, and of course they nearly lose their next game again against Phoenix, but basically through some magic that basically happened. And what I mean by that is that again a lucky play broke in their favor.
Yeah.
They were able to find a way to get through. And at this point in the movie, we're going towards the last game against Dallas. And Dallas, they said that all their players crossed the picket line. So you're dealing with NFL starter defense, aka World Championship defense, right?
Yeah.
And because they were the world champions the year before, I don't know why they chose Dallas that way, but whatever. Um, and it became clear at this point that it's like okay, this is where everything kind of comes over, and Martell decides to cross the picket line, so he's going to be put in as the starter of the next game.
Yeah, he's like the only one from the team also, right? Like, or at least they never mention anyone else. It's
I think
only
they
Martell.
mentioned one other guy, but they never show that other guy, so I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, it's just the one guy.
like none of the actual replacements who are like characters
Right.
don't
So
play. The only person who's not playing is
is
Shane.
right. So
Yeah.
so everybody's back into the game, and of course Shane kind of feels lousy for himself and decides not to meet up with Anvil and basically feels like he's kind of choking on whatever. And the first half against Dallas is an absolute disaster. Like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Martell once again is kind of
Prima donna.
yeah, thank you. That is a perfect word for him.
He's just peacocking around, and I'm better than you, and you guys
Right.
suck, and you're not real football players.
And like when McGinty tries to like confront him, he's all like I play I throw the ball right. He's like I throw the balls or I make the plays that I call on the field. And he goes, well, that's not how I coach. And he's like, well, that's how I play. And I'm like,
Yeah.
ugh,
Two. I'm a
please
pro.
go away.
I'm a pro ball quarterback. 2 championships.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and of course he's just like severely clashing with everybody. But of course, going into halftime, McGinty says, as he's interviewed, what do you guys need to win? Which he made a comment earlier to Shane when Martell crossed the picket line. He says, there's one thing he doesn't have of yours, and that's heart. He got a lot
Yeah.
of heart. And that's what McGinty says. He says, we need heart. We need a lot of heart. And, beats on his chest a little bit to kind of reflect that.
Yeah.
Shane, of course, comes in at halftime.
That signal.
And, right, that was his bat signal. And I kind of crack up a little bit because some of the things that I'm not really mentioning is some of the dialogue that's being used in this, because the dialogue is a 2000s version of 80s talk. Does that
Yeah.
make
No,
like
that makes perfect sense.
like they're they're being a little bit snarky with each other. It's kind
Yeah.
of like Groucho Marx, very witty, coming back with each other.
Yeah.
They're like Shane, what took you so long? He's all like, oh, I got stuck in traffic, or
Right.
whatever, right? Or when his car's flipped over, oh, car troubles.
Right.
It's like okay, like
Yeah. This if you like this is a football movie, but it's like wrapped in like a it's like a comedy wrapped in a football movie type of situation,
yes,
you know?
that's a very good description of this movie.
Yeah.
Um, of course, Martell decides to basically said that Shane's a has been, he'll never be anybody, and like Shane's like, I'm really okay with this,
Yeah.
like I
That's
just
fine.
really want to play this game. And they come back, and first of all, the first play of the second half that they come back to, first of all, even before the first play of the second half, Shane comes out and he just straight up kisses Annabelle, like on national TV, and then Madden's like, it's somewhere I was like, he can't do that. He can't do that to a player. Madden's like, what are they going to do? Fire him? He's out of
Yeah.
contract like tomorrow. I'm like, you know what? When you put it that way, there's a lot I would probably consider doing.
Oh
The,
yeah.
the first play of the second half should have ejected everybody because they straight up like mob beat down the NFL players, and I'm cracking up at this image of just everybody. They as they're showing the melee, there is one particular melee that you literally see. Shane Falco's number is number 16. You see whoever the stunt man is in number 16 straight up drop kick a player.
Yep. They're some rowdy thugs, you know what I'm saying?
I couldn't stop laughing at it because I'm like, what is this?
What is
You can't
this?
just drop kick a player,
Right.
and then
That's
you're
insane.
back in the game. Like,
Yeah, I mean if you tackle someone too hard, they'll fucking, flag you. Right? So
right. So they, of course, rally back to this 17-14 score as they basically come in for a 32-yard field goal. And the leg comes out, and because he's having these like mob guys come out and basically like kind of bully him all throughout the movie, because he owes them money, to be fair.
well, yeah, you
He Right,
can't be a illicit, can't be
right,
a rowdy bar owner without being into the mob for
for a little bit. So
yeah.
these guys are just like, when am I going to get to my money? And just stuff like that. And he basically starts to get nervous before the play, and basically starts crying in the middle of the field. And I'm like, you can't. It's a 32-yard field goal, dude. Like, I'm not saying I can make that right now, but probably if I had like 3 weeks of training as a kicker, I could make a 32-yard field goal.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, look, you blew out that crazy one earlier, the
Right.
record-setting one.
The 32-yarder isn't that bad. So
Yeah, you should be able to do this one hungover.
Falco immediately calls an audible, like gets this ball. He's 32 yards away, and he finds a way to run it all the way into the end zone. Mind you, like punching guys off of him and just kind of pushing them up. I'm like, oh, do these guys forget how to tackle? And I'm
No,
like,
he's just that good.
Falco, he's like 185 pounds. Why can't you
Yeah,
guys bring him down? So,
right. Like he can't really stand up to two guys. If two
right.
guys went in on him.
So, of course, he scores a touchdown. Crowd goes wild. But in the process, a flag was thrown as holding was called. So we now get this pinnacle moment of the movie. I know you're tired, whatever. Does the whole speech. Gentlemen, it's been an honor to share share this battle with you, share the battlefront with you, whatever. And he goes,
I'll go down with the ship. Yeah.
right, he basically takes the ball, throws it into the end zone. Of course, the first rounder tight end, catches it beautifully and scores a touchdown and wins the game for everybody. As streamers come down and you're hearing David Bowie's, Heroes playing. And I will be healing, like doing all that. And I'm like, yeah, that's a moment. You're capturing the moment pretty well there.
Yeah, enjoy this because this is as good as it gets, boys.
Right. And it kind of ends on like this monologue from McGinty that's just basically McGinty was saying when the replacement players went home that day, there were no ticker tape parades, there were none of this. They just cleaned out their lockers and went home, but they at least had that little moment of a second chance history that they could have gotten. It ends on a really positive note on that. Obviously, the Sentinels make the playoffs because of that. We don't ever know what winds up happening with the Sentinels. I'm assuming if they're following the Redskins, they win the Super Bowl, which would really piss me off because that just means Martell wins the Super Bowl. But whatever.
Yeah, Martell sucks.
But that's the replacements. Like, I know this was kind of a talk-heavy football movie, but yeah, it's a pretty easy movie to get through.
Yeah, like really, again, and we were talking about this before, like, I'm not the biggest football guy, right? And I think the football, plays are good in this, and the football's good, but really, for me, it's everything that kind of surrounds the movie. It's the characters. I mean, you got, you have so many of these, like, surprise actors who pop up in this, the supporting guys who are excellent, like Keith David's like the lawyer of the NFL guys, and you have Orlando Jones as the fast-talking wide receiver who's a mini mart guy, and
who essentially has a cameo in this movie.
Yeah,
he comes out, with like this whole like speech. He's all like, "I'm pretty sure the violation of these replacement players go against the Constitution, Declaration,
right,
and the Emancipation Proclamation." While we're at it,
it's like, damn, chill out, Don King. Like, you're their lawyer. Like, I get it. Yeah, no, it's just there's like Jon Favreau is fucking hilarious in this movie.
Yeah, he keeps killing his players.
Yeah, Faison Love's hilarious in this movie. Orlando Jones hilarious in this movie.
It's a feel-good movie that while it's not like they do this quite a bit in football movies, and they kind of learned a little bit from Remember the Titans, because it used to be where you really only focused on like 2 or 3 guys, right?
Yeah.
And like those 2 or 3 guys was what's going to be. So in this case, the 2 or 3 guys in this case would have been Falco, McGinty, and then one of the other players, right?
Sure.
Maybe if you really wanted to call it that. Instead, they kind of spread the love a little bit, made sure that everybody brought something to the table a little bit.
Right.
And I agree with you. It's really great. Let's get into some takeaways so we can wrap this thing up. Who's getting your That Guy award?
That guy? Oh, man. Well, I mean, really, the choice is kind of obvious because we know who our hero is. I'll give it to Gene Hackman, though, because I think he's just like would be the coolest coach to have if you're going to have one. You know what I mean?
That's a really solid choice, actually.
Yeah, he's tough but fair, but also he gives you your attaboys. He's like, yeah, I would have loved to kicked his ass too.
His attaboys are really great. He really does a good job of like inspiring his guys. Who's getting your That Chick award?
Well, this movie only has one chick, so.
Strippers too.
Fine, I'll give it to the strippers. That way you can have the good one.
No. Give it to whoever.
No. It's yeah, you know what? The strippers actually make a successful play, and since they're not football players, I'm gonna give it to them.
That Fool award.
I'm gonna give it to That Fool. Ooh. Well, I mean, our fool is Martell in this movie, so I'm gonna give it to him because he always, for someone who never does anything useful in the movie, he has a lot of shit to talk.
He does. Cut that out.
Oh man, that puke scene on the football field.
That was pretty gross.
That ran a little too long.
It was too much.
Especially because you had the sumo guy, and they're just like, "Why are you eating eggs before you go play? You're insane."
Right, he has like 20 raw eggs, and he's just like chomping through.
It's like, you know what? It'd have been one thing if he like just, subvert it, flip it. He takes all these eggs, he protein loads, and he just rips through everybody. Nope, he just starts puking everywhere, and then everyone else starts puking everywhere.
Right. Does this movie age well?
You know what? For me, I think it does. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's definitely like, it does feel like an 8. like a late '90s, like early 2000s kind of movie, but it's fun. There's recognizable characters. It's like you root for the good guys. You want them to win. It has what you want in like a like a feel good sports movie. So I say yeah.
An iconic scene.
Iconic scene. I think I am going to give it to the like the bar scene where Shane, he goes in and he makes it happen. He
Right.
gets the girl.
Right. Pretty fair.
Yeah.
All right. My That Guy award. You took McGinty, which is a really, really strong pick. And if I was here with Jay, I'd probably pick McGinty. I'll go ahead and give it to Keanu. With special little shout out to Jon Favreau for playing insanity like embalmed in a cop. Like
Yeah. He's awesome in that.
right. But I never felt like I didn't get any sort of like hatred or whatnot from him. All I got was like I am really, really, really compassionate about my job.
Yeah, he's jacked. He's I'm gonna be the best football player. I'm gonna be the best cop. I'm just
Right.
hit me in the face.
Right.
Let's
It's like
do
a
it.
rage cop a little
Yeah.
bit. But I'll get to Falco. Falco kind of has everything you want in a quarterback. He has a good arm. He's a pretty humble guy. Even afterwards, he doesn't really care about so much the fame. He just wants to. He just kind of wants to live his life, and he was happy what it is. Now that made me seem like he's a little bit sheepish and a little, not willing to stand up to confrontation. But I think he just realizes that I'm going to get everything that I can out of this, and he has no problem confronting his players.
Yeah.
Like, like, like when he gets knocked down, like afterwards, he's like angry with everybody in there.
Yeah.
You could tell, like he was really getting like the players, like it felt natural that the players were like, you know what, I kind of really like this guy. You
Yeah,
know
it's very zen, and that's the Keanu experience, man.
exactly. Um, the That Chick Award, I'll give it to Annabelle. Annabelle kind of hits all the right notes.
Oh yeah.
She's responsible. She's beautiful. She's uh,
Crazy enough.
yeah. She's crazy enough without going overboard with it.
Yeah.
Um, she's legitimately funny and something that and you could tell that she really had, however way that she acted it really seemed like she really was into Shane. It didn't feel superficial at all. It didn't feel
No. It
fake.
definitely felt like it felt like definitely she was having fun with it. It felt like the actor was having fun with it. It felt like the character was having fun with the situation, and
Right.
you could tell that there's something there. But she just kind of gives him just enough pushback to kind of see if he's whether
Right.
he's full of shit or not, and
Right.
it works.
Um, that full award. So you took Martell, and Martell's a really, really. I mean, really, he is that fool. But I'm actually going to give it to Jack Warden. Like, dude, I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to sell, stuff. But the minute that he said, "Well, Martell crossed the picket line," and it's like, okay, what does that mean? He's like,
Sure.
well, I can't have an $8 million quarterback sit on the bench to a replacement player. And I'm like,
You
I kind
should.
I'm kind of sitting there and I'm like, that's the wrong mentality. Just because you're
No.
somebody a high amount, you
No.
you you put the people that's producing. Now, to be fair, Shane was getting very lucky in some,
Sure.
but a win's a win.
Yeah. No. I mean, the argument you can make is that Shane, as a quarterback until that last game, wasn't really putting up results, but the team itself was. But on this other end, not to be all like retributive or dick, but it's like, yeah, well, he walked out on the team, he's striking, like he crossed the picket line, so he's still going to get paid. He's going to start the next season. Make that bitch ride the pine.
Right.
Fuck it.
And look, if you don't make the playoffs, you don't make the playoffs. I understand that. I understand that, and maybe where some of that thinking comes in. But dude, like,
But also too, like trust your coach, right? Because
well, also trust your team a little bit.
no, trust your team, but like if the coach is like, "Hey, I don't want Martell in. We have a plan. Yeah, we've got it by the skin of our teeth a couple of times here, but we still did it." So, he's talking about like, well, the publicity, what the fans expect, whatever, whatever. Like,
Bro,
no, let the coach the fucking team, man.
right. Um, yeah, so that's that fool. Cut that out. I'm kind of with you with the barf scene. There just isn't. There just it doesn't really do too much for me because I'm not laughing at it. I'm going, oh, gross.
Girl.
Um, I also kind of wanted to say maybe you could have cut down on the cheerleader tryouts a little bit.
Sure.
It's like they had like four of them, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, like,
Let me propose an alternative to you then, right?
yeah,
Since we kind of agree. Um, there's like this scene where they do the whole car flip thing again, right? And this is now at this point, the Nationals are like a team, right? And they're like, well, we're gonna
right. The
protect our
senses are
quarterback.
right.
So like Faison Lund just walks up, right? He pulls out like a pistol and he starts shooting Martell's windshield. And it's like, whoa, dude, like 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 it's kind of funny, but it's like one, like I get that you're on this team and like maybe the cops are looking the other way because everyone loves sports, but it's like, dude, you straight up pulled out a pistol. Like if the point was that you're tougher than the guys or whatever,
You win the minute you pull it out.
like they're flipping his truck, right? So that's sort of like a big deal or whatever, right? But it's like that's like discharging a firearm unlawfully. That's you can
There's
make the
like
argument for
civilians in the
brandishing.
background and everything, and I'm like,
Like, yeah, like that was like, damn, dude. Like, all right, you're a gangster. I get it, I guess, but fuck.
so that's why I cut that out.
Sure.
Does this movie age well? Yeah, I think. Okay, it's actually, in my opinion, it's close to what I call ageless, and I'll tell
Sure.
you why. Um, I think there is a category of movies that you can like. Oh, dude, I could probably watch this movie at least once a year, and that's where I start really calling movies like ageless. Like when
Sure.
you're looking at like '80s movies, most of those 80s movies have really weird premise, but they're so enjoyable, like those John Hughes movies. You know,
Sure.
they have a weird premise, but they're so enjoyable. You can't really, like, nobody would ever say, I don't want to watch The Breakfast Club.
Yeah,
Like,
as
it's
soon
like
as
The
you said
Breakfast Club.
80s movie, my head went to Weird Science, and I'll
Right.
always watch
Weird,
that.
you're right. Weird Science is a great example, great example of that. So that's kind of where I'm at with this movie. I think this movie, even 20 years from now, people are going to be looking at this movie and be like, you know what? Pretty solid. This is
Yeah.
this is still. I could probably still watch it on TNT or TBS or whatever's going to be there in 20 years from now, 10 years from
Yeah.
now.
To,
And they're
to kind
probably.
of
I'm
Yeah,
cool.
to kind of go back to your like blast from the past reference you made earlier in the movie, it's like that, right? The movie feels of its time, but there's something that's just enjoyable about it. That's just always relatable. Some you can just the
Right.
premise is fun, so you can just wrap your head around it. It's fine.
Right. And finally, iconic scene. Um, there's a lot of really great speeches, but I got to give it to the quicksand speech because I felt like that was it's kind of a combination, like the quicksand speech and then the Gloria Gaynor dance in the prison. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that moment that it's like look, we're going to try to hit an emotional note for you, and this is something that's very real and it's true. Like when you're kind of dealing when you're just dealing with shit in life and you hear this, it's like, well, yeah, no, that dude, you're hitting every note that you possibly could on that. So yeah, so that's our episode. That's the replacements.
The replacements.
Let's get into some quick hits to wrap this thing up. And this is one of my personal favorite things. I don't know if you know this. During filming, Keanu Reeves was offered a tryout with the Baltimore Ravens, but actually turned it down. And I remember because it was like kind of a 3-week thing where it's like, is Keanu Reeves going to be the backup quarterback of the
Is he gonna be a football player now?
right? The Ravens would actually go on and win that Super Bowl 6 months later. So Keanu probably had a chance to be a Super Bowl champion.
Wow. Imagine if he had played and been a Super Bowl champion, had his own band, be the biggest movie star in the world for a period of time, you know?
Right. Clifford Franklin, who is Orlando Jones in this movie, is repeatedly seen tightly clutching a football in multiple off-the-field scenes, including in the cafeteria during the Chalk Talk quicksand scene. This is because of a deleted scene in which Coach McGinty tells Franklin to never let go of the ball in the hopes it will help him reduce dropping passes on the field, a mistake Franklin made alarmingly often.
Yep. That's his character flaw.
Keanu Reeves gained 23 pounds for this role.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Still very lean looking, very svelte, you know.
Still look great. Archie L. Harris, who plays Wilson Carr, was an actual replacement player during the '87 NFL strike. He played offensive tackle for the Denver Broncos, who eventually lost in Super Bowl 22 to the Redskins. Let's see, a couple more that I want to hit on. Earl Wilkinson is based on Tony Robinson, who was a replacement quarterback for the Redskins in a game against the Cowboys during the '87 strike. Robinson was an inmate on work release, and he was allowed to play that one game and led the Redskins to a 13-7 victory on Monday Night Football. It was one of the biggest upsets of the '87 season. Robinson was eventually released from prison in 2012.
So, yeah, you want to leave prison early, get good at football.
Right. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's one more that I wanted to hit that I thought was really interesting. Two more. There's the running back. So the running back during the scene where they're kind of cheersing everybody. Oh, when the team raises their glasses to Shane at the bar, Cochran's champagne glass is actually full of milk. Why? Because he's an incredibly religious man.
Yeah, he's a religious teetotaler, I guess.
So it's fair to assume that he probably doesn't drink. And finally, when Coach McGinty is interviewed at halftime during the Dallas game, he responds with miles and miles and miles of heart. This is actually a reference to a statement he made to Shane Falco when McGinty told Shane he was being cut. That Shane had the miles of heart necessary to be a professional quarterback. The song "Another Hapless Washington Team" the Senators sing in the movie, sing is "Damn Yankees," which that's all those references are. So that's it. That's going to be the replacements. Thank you once again to my guy here, Lund, for coming through in the clutch. Once again, as we record at like noon, I got to log back into my computer here. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Leland Hairston. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Leland Hairston. There it is.
Very cool.
Scrambling in the pocket.
And as always, you can find me on Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter at David Danger Neff. Please make sure you're following the Back to the Classics movie podcast at BTTC Podcasts or the Back to the Classics Movie Talk group that is located on Facebook. You're more than welcome to reach out to us there. If you have any needs for recording or editing purposes, make sure you reach out to us at beatnetworkonline.com/beatstudios so that we can go ahead and book you and see what we can kind of do to help you guys out. In terms of stuff that's kind of coming up, there's a project that I am working on that is hopefully gets dropped sometime in September, but it's gonna kind of be a little bit of a wait and see where everything is coming in at. It's pretty much what I got. You know, there's not too much more else to really cover. Make sure you check out all of our shows. We just had a 20v20 dropped on Sunday, so make sure you check that out. We will probably have another one this week. You know, whatever. We have so much fucking shit now, it's ridiculous. So yeah, that's our show. We will be back with you next week with a show, and hopefully we'll see if this follows the Keanu Swayze trend. But if not, make sure you follow. These are actually the next two movies are strictly Lund's picks, so I have no idea what the movies are going to be. Although I'm sure he will tell me once we stop recording here, so that I can kind of prepare for the show. But these are strictly Lund's picks, so I kind of want to put on him a little bit on running the show a little bit because I really want to see how he does.
Oh my gosh! All
Oh,
right.
yes. Uh,
Well,
that
the
being said, peace, love, and chicken grease, guys. We will see you guys next week. I'm your guy, Danger Neff, with my guy.
Lund Hairston.
We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.